I'm going to show that off in a minute. All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority's September 2020 board meeting. My name is Jessica Leto and I am the DDA board chair. This is my first board meeting being the board chair, and being remote, we don't have access to our gavel, so I have a rubber mallet. I'm ready.
All right.
I will go over details for today's meeting to make sure everyone understands what will take place. DDA board members are participating by video and audio. Staff members and other attendees will participate by audio only. Other participants may include Susan Paulé, DDA Executive Director, Sarah McCallum, DDA Accounting Director and Deputy Director, Maura Thompson, DDA Communications Manager, Jada Hallbrook, DDA Parking Services Manager, Amber Miller, DDA Capital Projects Manager, Kelly Graves, DDA Management Assistant, Liz Ralla, Civil Engineer with the DDA, and Mike McInnes, General Manager of the Republic Parking System. I want to thank members of the public who are joining us today. Your microphone will be muted during the meeting, but there are four 4-minute speaking slots at the beginning of the DDA meeting for public comment, and time has also been set aside at the end for public comment as well. The chat function is enabled for use by the DDA board members during the meeting to indicate you wish to speak. Kelly, thank you in advance for helping me keep track of this. Because this is a virtual meeting, we need each DDA board member and staff member to identify yourselves before speaking. This is to aid the folks who are participating via audio only, as well as record keeping. When not speaking, please mute your microphone. When it appears there are no disagreement, resolutions will be approved by voice consensus. If board members express disagreement, roll call votes will be taken. This will take a little extra time, but it's an essential part of the process to ensure each person's response is identified and correctly recorded on video and for the written minutes. As we begin, I want to once again thank everyone for participating and appreciate your patience and understanding as we go through this process. Susan, if you could please do our roll call.
Happily. Micah Bartome.
Here.
Tom Crawford.
Here.
Alex Deek.
Here.
Bob Gunzel.
Here.
Jihei Kim.
Here.
Tyler Kinley.
Here.
Marie Clough.
Here.
Jessica Letow.
Yes.
Molly McFarland.
Here.
Darren McKinnon.
Present.
Rishi Narayan.
Here.
Phil Weiss. We have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Susan. All right, to start off, can I have a motion to approve the board meeting agenda?
So moved.
That's
That's Bob.
Is there a second?
Marie second.
Thank you, Marie. Are there any changes? Hearing none, all those in favor of our agenda say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. The agenda for today's DDA meeting is approved. We didn't have anyone sign up ahead of time to speak, but are there any members of the public who wish to speak to the DDA at this time? Okay, hearing none. Next up is reports from city boards and commissions. The Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council met via Zoom last night. Steve Kaplan, I think I saw you a bit earlier.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So here, I'll give you we had a Zoom meeting last night, and a lot of what we talked about was, obviously COVID related. We started with some input from Susan, sort of getting us all up to speed on the all of the pilot projects that are being installed this week. A lot of them focused on, social distancing, spaces for restaurants downtown, etc., which seemed pretty obvious. The only comment I think I remember is, some out loud wondering how those spaces will continue to serve restaurants as the weather gets cooler. And then we spent a fair amount of time talking about the bikeways, the new bikeways that are being explored, particularly the one on Division Street. and just what it might require in terms of new driver awareness when turning across that lane, and also some cyclist awareness issues. Just several members had discussed nothing that actually went wrong, but just they became aware in driving and navigating around that bikeway how something could go wrong quite easily. So they were just wondering, what will become of those new dangers. Outside of that, we spoke quite a bit about what's happening with the University of Michigan students coming back, how we think it's affecting the town, what it might do to accelerate or exacerbate virus worries that already exist in the city. Not that we came to any real conclusions, just sort of thinking about it and thinking about what the university might do in multiple potential events. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. I'm reading my notes. One of the last things that we talked about was, in particular, the Old Fourth Ward created a neighbor guide and put it out so several members could read it. But it was discussed just a lot of the information, especially now during COVID or with lockdowns, the extent to which some of our neighborhood groups can consolidate and disseminate information could help people just sort of know their community better and adjust to whatever changes might happen. And that was it.
It's a meaty discussion, it sounds like. Steve, I'm curious about the CAC participation. With having to go remote, are you finding that people are finding it challenging to connect to the meeting?
There are a couple people who, so in particular, Ray participated last night. He was a little bit quiet, but I think the technology for Ray is still, he's been through several Zoom meetings, and it is a little bit different for him and daunting. Mm-hmm. But I think he's adjusting to it and really does like being able to listen intently to the conversations that are going on. Many of the people on the CAC are extremely adept with Zoom because of affiliation with the University of Michigan. We have a couple of professors who seem to be Zoom wizards, at least by comparison to me. Of course, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But yeah, so it was fairly fluent. I think people are getting their heads around it pretty well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is DDA board member communications. Please state your name before you speak if there's anyone who has anything to share. Okay, I'd now like to turn it over to Susan for the executive director report.
Well, with a great deal of pleasure, I'd like us all to welcome Jihei. She is joining our board. This is her first meeting. We are delighted to have you here. And if you wouldn't mind just taking just a minute or two to introduce yourself. If you don't know other members of the board, we could also introduce ourselves, but it'd be great to know a little bit about you. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. I'm so excited to be joining the DDA. My name is Jihei Kim. I'm the chef and owner of Miss Kim Korean restaurant right down in Carytown, and I'm also a resident of the Carytown area. We are a part of Zingerman's community of businesses. I've been living here for about 14 years and running the business in various forms about 10 years. So I've experienced DDA and working with DDA while the beautification of the Fifth Avenue was going on, and I thought you guys did an extremely great job, especially communicating with the local community, business community here. And I had the pleasure of talking to Jessica about what you guys are working on, and I just thought it was a great great organization for me to join. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Again, thank you. We're glad you're here. Madam Chairwoman, that's all I have for you.
Everything. All right. That was a long list. G.A., we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I'd now like to ask for a motion to approve the July and August minutes.
So moved. Oh, this is Molly.
Oh, thanks, Bonnie. Can I have a second, please?
This is Micah, second.
Thank you. Are there any corrections to the minutes that need to be made? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, the July and August minutes are approved. Thanks all. Next up on the agenda are the DDA subcommittee reports, beginning with the Affordable Housing and Economic Development Committee. I'll turn it over to Tyler Kinley and Micah Bartlome, committee co-chairs.
Thank you. Let me bring up my notes here. Appreciate it. Yes, we met, and it was a great meeting. The majority of the discussion was surrounding the affordable housing initiative of acquiring and renovating the Lurie Terrace. Lurie Terrace is 136 apartments. They're below market rate, and they are serving households 62 and older. It could have gone, or it could go market rate for sale, and the goal of this is to acquire it to prevent it from doing so. The purchase price is $4.05 million, and the total project cost, including the renovations, would be $5,336,400. The AAA-HC will apply for a HUD-insured loan for the maximum amount supported by the current rents. And the DDA, to help make this happen, is being asked for a grant for up to $1 million to cover the balance of this funding. It could be less. The actual grant amount the DDA will provide will be dependent on the interest rate that gets locked in at the time HUD approves the loan, which, you know, we need to sort of get in the door, and then it gets locked in. So it's a little bit in flux, but it's up to $1 million is the request. Our fiscal year 2021 housing fund budget, it has enough funds. However, $720,000 of that was previously committed to the development of affordable housing with the old Y lot. The resolution that we're bringing forward contains language releasing this restriction and allowing us to use these funds for the purchase of Lurie Terrace, but we will also have the opportunity to appropriate funds for the development of 350 South 5th, the Y lot that we discussed, during future budget cycles. I'd like to open up a little bit of this for discussion. Jennifer Hall can be available to answer questions, about the project. Sarah is here if there are questions about the use of the housing fund towards this grant. Micah, please add anything if I've missed anything.
Before we start, could I say, could we get a motion and a second for that before we go? Sorry.
Sure.
So moved. Bob.
Second,
Sorry.
Tom.
Okay.
So
So
now open to discussion.
No, thanks, Tyler. I think you did a great job summing it up. And, those of you who have been following in the committee, it seems like a really great opportunity to support an important project that has wide support. The city council has already voted on, and for us to be a great partner in advancing our goals of keeping, maintaining, and growing affordable housing in Ann Arbor.
Jessica, here's a question of process. Should I read this aloud, the full resolution, or is it enough for people to see it?
I'm going to actually boot that question over to staff. Is there a recommendation on whether or not to read the resolution?
I don't think there's a need to read it. I think everybody has it in front of them. You might read the title of it, but I think you've already done that. Just what is the resolution? And you can just look at the title.
Okay, resolution to approve a grant for the acquisition and renovation of Lurie Terrace by the Ann Arbor Affordable Housing Corporation. If there are any questions, the floor is open.
So one question for me, this is Rishi. We had 745 or somewhere between 720 and 745, but it could be up to 1 million. So we'd have it could potentially be another $250,000 that we'd be putting in. I was just wondering if, and I missed last finance committee meeting, so I apologize if that was discussed, but I assume that's all been checked out and everything. I'll go back.
And I'll ask Sarah if she wouldn't mind jumping in, but we're talking about a couple things that are related. There is over $1 million in the DDA's housing fund. And of that, there is a sum of money that we've committed to the Y lot. And what this resolution would do would be to temporarily set aside that commitment of funds with an expectation that we will reimburse ourselves with the next budget. So there is sufficient money in the housing fund. It's a question of setting aside the funds that have been committed for the Y lot temporarily.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that. All good then.
Sarah, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, what we had almost 800,000 at the end of fiscal year 20 in the housing budget. Of that, 720 remains restricted or committed rather to the old Y lot. We had spent 25,000 on a study for the old Y lot in this year. That left 73,000 uncommitted. In fiscal year 21, we budgeted a transfer in from the TIF fund of $536,000. And then that allowed us to budget the full $1 million for this purpose. We just need that restriction removed so that we can use that 720 that's remaining as a part of that budgeted amount.
At our meeting, we did have a healthy discussion about making sure that the commitment to the Y lot was replenished. So that is on the forefront of everyone's mind here.
Jessica, I'll just this is Tom Crawford. If I could just add, having seen this from the city side as well, I just want to publicly compliment the effort that Jennifer Hall did to really make this come to fruition. It was it's taken quite some time. She has done an amazing job. We're not at closing yet, but just want to really thank her for all the work that she's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom.
This is Jessica. So I have a question about the timing of it. I understand why we don't have a firm number on what the grant is going to be yet. I'm curious what the purchase timeline is of when we know what that number is going to be.
So we submitted the grant application, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and it can take up to 60 days to get that firm commitment from HUD. And that's when we'll know, and then I'll report back to Susan so she can let the board know. And then the closing is probably going to be somewhere in the realm of around December of this year.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like there might be no more discussion. Can we vote?
We had such a lively conversation at the committee meeting. I feel like that may have answered a lot of questions. And I really appreciated at that committee meeting our commitment to retaining our commitment to the Y lot 350 South 5th, even while we're able to take advantage of this opportunity now. So hearing no further comments. Okay. If we're ready, we'll go ahead and vote on this. So all in favor of this resolution, and Kelly, can you put the name of it back up on the screen, please? I'm just going to reiterate that. Thank you very much. Oh, never mind. I actually have the name right in front of me. All in favor of the resolution to approve a grant for the acquisition and renovation of Lurie Terrace, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Very good. The resolution is approved. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Tyler, any other updates?
We continued to discuss a bit more of affordable housing with Jennifer Hall, just taking advantage of her time yet again, which we are very appreciative of. She provided an update on 12 city properties being considered as future affordable housing sites. That the former Y lot is the furthest along, and we really just sort of discussed a lot of what is sort of circling around many of those sites. City Council has approved moving forward to create an entitlement plan for 415 West Washington. It's a site with a lot of challenges to be worked out. There's no funding yet to pay for this entitlement planning. Other sites that will undergo some public engagement are the Polio lot, the Klein lot, First and William, Fourth and Catherine, 721 North Main, and a couple of sites out of the downtown, Fire Station number 2 on Stadium, and the Ann Arbor Housing Commission site on South Industrial. In addition, the council did unanimously approve placing an affordable housing millage on the November ballot. It would be 1 mil for 20 years, which is it's a big move for the city and for the affordable housing projects that we want to see happen. And the approval would have a pretty big positive financial impact on the implementation of any of the city-owned site that we talked about. So again, Jennifer Hall has been an absolute all-star in this, available for questions. And our next meeting is Wednesday, September 9th at 9 a.m., again over Zoom. Micah, do you have anything to add?
Nope. I think that's it. Thanks, Tyler.
No, thanks all.
And that meeting is with partners, yeah?
It is.
Okay, just making sure I'm keeping up. Thank you.
Sure.
Next up is the Capital Improvements Committee report. I'll turn it over to Alex Deek and Molly McFarland, our committee co-chairs.
Great. Hi, everyone. So we have a couple of resolutions to bring to the board. So first, we want to move the following resolution to adopt project values for the People-Friendly Streets Part 2. So asking for a second or a motion.
Marie.
Great. Okay, so we can jump right in then. And I apologize, I do have a toddler here. Try to keep him quiet. So at the July meeting, the CIC agreed to a set of foundational values that would be used to guide DDA projects. The city's key initiatives help to inform these values, e.g. Building affordable housing on city properties, recently approved A2 Zero Carbon Action Plan, and the city's Transportation Master Plan, including its focus on Vision Zero goals. So Amber and Smith Group shared a DDA district map showing where there were opportunities for the DDA to make an impact in direct connection with these values. So things like water main upsizing, bicycle route gaps, etc. This helped underscore the location and benefit from the next round of people-friendly streets projects. And of course, Amber is here to answer any questions as we look at this resolution. So from there, I'd like to open it up for discussion. Is that where we go now? Great.
So again, the resolution is on page 35. And I don't know, usually we don't read resolutions, but just so we can look at the bullet points, the set of values that we're embracing.
Sure. So maybe Kelly, then even if you scroll down, you see the bullet points on the Zoom screen. So I could just read these, Susan, if you think that would be beneficial for everyone listening in.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay. So the values that were proposed are safe, comfortable downtown streets, equitable, just access for all people, affordable and inclusive community, resilient, energy responsible downtown, vibrant and thriving local economy, responsible design and implementation, and connected community with streets as civic space. So these should be, I mean, we definitely talked a lot in committee and talked before then, hoping that these aren't controversial to everybody on the board as we've talked about these things over time. And I guess unless there's any discussion or pushback or questions, I think we could move forward.
This is Jessica. I appreciate that this is basically drawing a direct line from the board retreat work that we did earlier this year, and drawing that from the values that we set as a board to the project values that we're setting at the capital improvements level. So if there are no further questions or comments on the resolution to adopt project values for people-friendly streets phase 2, we will take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
There's a disagreement, say nay. Okay, the resolution passes. Molly?
Great, thank you, Jess. Okay, so we have another resolution to talk about. This resolution is to support the DDA capital projects for inclusion in the city CIP for fiscal year 2022. Can I ask for a second?
Second, Marie.
Thank you. I don't know why that's so hard for me to remember those rules. Anyway, okay, so this is a joint resolution between the CIC and the Operations Committee. It's on page 40 of the packet, so everybody can follow along. The memo summarizing these recommendations starts on page 36 though, so all the information before you get to the actual resolution. The spreadsheets for the CIC specifically are on pages 37 and 38, and operations are on page 39. So a major change is a recommendation to shift the CIC related project timelines 1 year. This will allow for better coordination with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, their affordable housing planning and meaningful public engagement, which has already been challenged, or sorry, which has been challenged by the pandemic. Both Amber and Jada are here to answer any questions that anyone might have.
This is Jessica. This might be another case of such a robust and juicy conversation at the committee level that we've kind of done our work prior to the board meeting. And that was a really robust conversation. I'll say, speaking for myself, the grief that I feel for moving some of our projects back is way outweighed by the fact that I feel like with the upcoming Housing Commission plans, with 820 and with our transportation plan, I feel like our work gets to respond to city direction in a very coordinated and focused way. So I'm glad for the opportunity. Hearing no further questions or comments, all in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
Jessica, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Trying to get over here and raise that hand. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry, just so I'm clear, on page 37 and 38, it lists the projects. They're in the project, the costs are different. Can you just clarify for me what that means? How do I interpret page 37 versus 38 for the projects? Like it's got, for example, 27 million of street construction, 22.7 million of street construction. And then it's got 15 million on the next slide, page 38.
This is Amber, I can address that. So what you see on 37 is meant to give you an overview of the total project cost and the construction start year. What you see on page 38 summarizes the total cost for that CIP period. So some of these projects started before this current CIP period.
Oh, I see. So some of that 22.7 million might occur before 21 or after 26.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Tom. Did I hear somebody else that had a question or a comment? Okay. I know it can be tricky to get to the mute and the hand raise button, so understood. Okay, so hearing no further comment, all in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay, hearing no disagreement, the resolution to support the DDA capital projects for inclusion in the city CIP for fiscal year 22 is approved. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I think I can hand it over to Alex, who's going to give us some project updates and some pandemic response updates as well.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I'm giving these updates, but Liz is also here to answer questions, as is Amber. So with regard to First and Huron, the water main was installed at First near Huron, and water main testing was done last week. Conduit installation and road paving south of Huron has been delayed. And that's because we're awaiting approval with relation to some agreements concerning the railroad near that area. So that's just slightly delayed, but I think expected to move forward and eventually. With the landscape maintenance that's ongoing on Huron as well. And the William Street project, there's some miscellaneous punch list items and repairs taking place in the coming weeks. And I'm sure Liz can talk about what those are if anybody has any questions. Before I move on to pandemic response, does anybody have any project update questions? Okay. All right. And with regard to the pandemic response, but it's been, as you all know, the parking space uses for the restaurants for pickup and dining. The DDA barricaded some of those areas for restaurants to use with customers coming in, and that's been very well received by business owners. And, you know, obviously they've appreciated that and used that a lot. The city engaged a vendor, Cadillac, to install street elements for the DDA and the city pilot projects. And these were aimed at providing social distancing space, as well as using this time to kind of look into how we best shape future projects with COVID response and social distancing. While approval delays impacted the start date, projects have been installed and are getting going this week. And then multiple social media, and Maura can step in here, but multiple social media, digital and print communications with stakeholders, property owners, and neighborhoods have been started, and they'll continue throughout the duration of these projects to make sure, you know, everybody's feeling like they're having communication with the DDA and the city on these projects. Any other questions?
Do we know if we're going to carry on right through the winter?
I don't know that. Do Amber and Liz know that?
This is Amber. I can speak to the lane closures, the pilot projects to allow for enhanced physical distancing space. That will not carry through the winter. That is a 90-day pilot, and so we'll monitor it and measure it and get feedback while it's in place, but it will be removed before the winter. And then I'll look to Maura to see if there's any updates on the closures for businesses.
So right now the street closures have been extended to September 21st. However, given that football isn't happening, we suspect there may be a request to perhaps extend that through October, but we have not heard yet.
Hey, Amber, this is Tom. Could I actually ask a question on the projects? And forgive me if other people already know this, but on like the William Street, now that's been in a little bit, what is our experience on the maintenance and the use of that? I mean, how are we feeling about the level of repair and maintenance that has to be done, and whether it's successful or not?
That's a great question. And actually, just before we all went to work at home due to the pandemic, Maura and I had worked with Public Works, Transportation, and the police department to summarize the results of the first year. And maybe that's something we can bring back. It got set aside, but I think that's something we should bring back to a future capital improvements committee meeting. Overall, the winter maintenance, I think, went quite well. There were some growing pains, but I think city staff adapted really well over the season. I think our biggest challenge continues to be parking in the bike lane. And so we had temporary cones in place that Maura and I were actually monitoring and putting back into place when they got moved. Now that we're working from home, there's not quite that level of oversight. So that's where we need to find a long-term solution. But overall, I think it's going really well, and maintenance is lower than anticipated.
This is Jessica. Our 1 year mark for the William Street bike lane is October, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and we did plan on doing data collection and some focused enforcement and education this spring, but again, that got pushed back due to the pandemic. But now we're revisiting that, realizing that physical distancing measures may be in place for some time, and that the community would still benefit from additional education.
This is Jessica again. To that point, Maura, can you remind me, I thought I saw in the DDA newsletter this month something about a survey with respect to the Healthy Streets projects. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. We have, for the pilot projects that just went in place this week, we have an online survey. I can send the link to everybody, and we're going to start really promoting that survey link to get as much user feedback as possible. But it's on our People Friendly Streets website. There's a Healthy Streets pilot project page, and the survey link is right there. And in addition, we distributed 100 yard signs along the corridors of those projects. And those signs include a QR code that leads you directly to the survey. So we are just starting to get up and running with pushing out that survey.
Thank you. Alex, anything else?
No, but just going along with what Maura just said with those surveys, I've already seen them pop up on the Nextdoor app and people are talking about them. So Maura's very good at getting it out there.
Good to hear.
Great. Thanks, Alex and Molly and Amber and Liz in the background. Next up is the Operations Committee report. I'll turn it over to Darren McKinnon, who's a co-chair of the committee.
All right. Yeah, Phil couldn't make it today, so I'll go through the agenda. So we already voted on the CIP recommendations as part of the Capital Improvements Committee, but the Operations Committee was kind of a joint supporter of that, so we don't need to rehash that. But we discussed the process, and we also talked about the fact that our budget is going to be, as we have in the past, we know it's going to be significantly impacted negatively by the pandemic, and we made it a point to say that even though we're putting CIP dollars out there, we recognize that we're not committing to spending any of those funds, and actual funds committed will be done during the budget process in subsequent years, and that will be heavily dependent on actual revenues as we move forward. We talked about upper level fencing deterrent. Unfortunately, in the past month, there was yet another suspected suicide from one of the parking garages at 4th and William. So it just, despite that we have revenue shortfalls, it reinforced the issue that we need to continue to work on installing more suicide deterrent fencing at all the garages. So reading this thing here, it says, continuing work to finish on installing deterrent fences was deemed critical. At $450,000 was included in an adjusted spending plan presented to the board in May. The forest structure is the next location in the queue to obtain fencing on the higher levels below the roof. Note that the forest structure is co-owned by the city and the University of Michigan. The city owns roughly 2/3 and the university owns 1/3, and there is a maintenance cost sharing agreement in place. The university does not want to participate financially in the installation of additional fencing at this garage, but we feel we need to move forward regardless, and we'll continue to hopefully have conversations with individuals at the university to try to get them to change their mind, perhaps. So staff recommended moving forward with this project, and the DDA will be paying for it in its entirety. So the preliminary cost estimate is between 300 and 400,000, and I believe we are going to move into the bidding phase of this moving in the near future here. Did I miss anything on that, Jada?
Nope, you got it all. Thank you.
Okay. So next up is, unless anybody has questions on that, any board members have questions on the suicide fencing?
Derek, this is Tom. A quick question. The university's declination of contributing, do you know if that's related to the economic situation or whether it's some other reason?
It might be a combination. I think it's economic and political. Jada, can you enlighten Tom? I know we spoke about that at the committee meeting, but Jada might have a finer point on it.
This is Jada speaking. I believe it is both. I think you know, across their parking system, they, as we are you know, restricting funds and, you know, only working on things that they deem critical. I believe it's also a decision system-wide. They have installed some fencing at their medical campus facilities, but they have not yet decided to do that at the campus, central campus locations. So I think it's both.
Okay. The reason I was asking is because if it was financial, I wonder if there was any discussion about us moving forward now, but then helping out in a greater way later on.
Yeah, we'll reconvene, you know, with our representatives from U of M and continue to talk through this.
Okay, anybody else on the suicide deterrent fencing? If not, the next item here is the parking equipment. We did approve parking equipment upgrade for all garages a while ago, and even though, as stated earlier, we are experiencing a significant financial impact to the system based on the pandemic, because of the age of the equipment, we need to continue, and we've already kind of worked our way down that road. So that's ongoing. The installation at South Ashley lot was completed just last month, and because of the pandemic, some of the equipment is coming a little slower than we would like, but it is still coming, and there's parts coming from around the world, and you can imagine supply chains are disrupted throughout. So we still are thinking that at the end of this December of 2020, we would have all the equipment in. That's our expectation based on what we're hearing from the manufacturer at this point. That equipment, if you're not familiar, is already in place. It has been in place at the 4th and William garage, so it's and there hasn't been any problems with it there. So any questions on the parking equipment? Annual restoration work, as is always done, we're continuing to spend money to maintain our old garages. So restoration work at Maynard, Ashley, and Library Lane. 4th and William and the Forest is underway. Demolition and replacement of the southeast stair tower at 4th and Washington is scheduled to begin this month. Has that started yet, Jada?
No, we are aiming for a mid-September start. And as soon as we have a date certain, we'll let you all know.
Thank you. So keep in mind, if you use that garage or you speak to others that use that garage, that is the one and only staircase in that garage. And because of that, once that staircase is taken offline for construction, it will have an impact on the safe occupancy number of that structure. So we will have to reduce the capacity and the number of cars we can allow at any given time so that we don't have a life safety issue there. And Maura will continue to update us and the rest of the community through the DDA newsletter and otherwise. Any questions on that project? Okay, parking revenue collections. Republic Parking reached out in July to all permit holders, notifying that the revenue collection process and payment plan options was August 7th contract deadline. So you may remember when this first started, we gave all pass holders a little bit of a break, if you will, in terms of not having to pay immediately, and some of the smaller pass holders got a waiver on one pass. So we have since gone back to telling people that they need to make their accounts current or risk losing their passes. it's going pretty well. 63 accounts with outstanding balances in July are now pay in full, and 6 accounts have set up payment plans. There are some that have either not responded or are indicating that they're no longer intending to keep their passes. And so Republic's working with those account holders to terminate their agreements. There is currently $264,000 in the 60 to 90 day past due category, and Republic is working to get those collections current, although given the age of them, it's looking like it might be some write-offs coming. And July occupancy in the garages at peak periods was at 42%, which is an improvement of 31% average occupancy. So we had a little bit of a discussion about parking occupancy as it relates to typical non-coronavirus, year over year, and how that relates to revenue. And so we're generally looking better than we were over the last few months, but of course not as good as we were a year ago at this time. Any questions on parking revenue collections?
Can I ask a question that's partially related? I'd be curious, Susan, or if somebody could weigh in. I see what it's done to our parking revenue. What's going on with the businesses in the city? Have there been a lot of closures? Is the vacancy getting higher? I mean, do we have kind of any sense of where things are going?
In fairness to your question, I think there are more questions than answers. A survey was done by Emily Heinz earlier in the epidemic to find out what was happening to the business community. It was a county-wide survey. Most of the responses were from downtown, and the questions were, everything in the gamut. How has the pandemic affected you? Many businesses spoke to accommodating by having employees stay home. Others were changing their business model, for instance, doing food delivery versus table service. But that, as much as she tried to get a comprehensive view, it was all voluntary. And despite the DDA, the chamber, the city, a number of us pushing it out, the Main Street Area Association, she was able to get a few hundred responses countywide, but not in a comprehensive way. It was just voluntary. I'm in regular contact with the chamber, and it's the same question. They're following up with members to see where everybody is. There isn't a comprehensive list that I'm aware of. What we're hearing are individual and anecdotal stories. The concern I think everyone has is this pandemic is likely going to continue lasting, and the loss of the football season has had enormous impact on a number of them. The university staying on campus and not going back to being all virtual classes is everybody's next dread, which is why there's so much discussion about social distancing and mask wearing, is we really would like to keep as many people on campus as possible. But even with that, the university made a decision that at Thanksgiving, they will complete this semester and they'll begin the next semester as virtual. So there'll be a 2-month period without the university functioning on campus. So again, that'll have an impact on our businesses. So at this point, most of the people, at least I'm talking to, are looking to the federal government to come back with that federal stimulus that had been talked about. In particular, I think the restaurants have worked together to lobby for some assistance as an industry, because the restaurant industry has been particularly hard hit. But at this point, I think we all know what we know from what we're hearing in the news. It isn't at this point clear that there is the next round of funding coming, despite at least for most economists see it as we can't let these businesses go under, because it's getting us down to a place where we can't come back. It's just going to be that much harder coming back. It's a long-winded answer of saying I don't have a specific number. I don't know all of the details, and I'm not sure that anybody else does, other than sort of the anecdotal instances of individual businesses at this point. But it's the most troubling thing that's keeping me up at night right now is our downtown and its vibrancy is built on the backs of a lot of individuals who have put a mortgage on their houses so that they could give themselves a job to create something special for our community. And a lot of these small businesses don't have the venture capital from Silicon Valley. They have local dollars. And I don't know that we have many more rabbits in our hats to be able to support them. And as was mentioned at the CAC meeting, once the weather gets cold, we're all starting to worry. We're allowing the use of the right-of-way, but when cold weather comes, that's really less feasible. And there aren't a lot of strategies left, and this is a nationwide crisis for small business. So I hate to have such a sobering response, but I'm not even sure that we all know the depth of this or the breadth of this, because there really isn't a way to get that information at this point.
Okay. Any other questions on the parking revenue collection?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Tom again, Darren. From a revenue perspective, I guess I'm curious from last year to this year, kind of project, you mentioned it was down a lot, but how much are we down from last year to this year? Do you remember?
I'm going to ask Sarah. Sarah has those numbers at her fingertips and can give you specifics, Tom. Obviously, January and February weren't really impacted, and then March is when it starts. So Sarah, are you available and you have those numbers at your fingertips?
I do. So this is fiscal year. So that would be June and July at this point. The revenues are at 50% of what they were in 2019.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of scenarios that we can all come up with for what the next 6 months or year look like. Can you just comment on how comfortable Finance Committee or DDA is with covering debt service if 50%, for example, is the high mark? Have you considered that?
Yeah, I don't think debt service is a concern at all at this point. It's the thing that I think is on my mind is maintenance of the structures. That's where we're going to see some cutbacks, that we probably won't be able to do the maintenance at the same timing that we would wish. But I feel like that the structures overall, and Jada can speak to this better than I can, have been maintained in good order. So we do have some flexibility there. We can push some of those out. And that's the work that we've been doing, really is looking at the operations side, trimming what we could, what was reasonable, and then also the maintenance and improvements. Those are going to be scaled back over the next few years. We know that's going to happen. But no, the debt service is not a concern at all. The one thing that's helpful is that we know we can, if worst case scenario, we can look to the TIF fund to pay that. So I believe that's secure.
And Sarah, it's probably worth noting that not proceeding with the Ann Ashley garage, we were kind of stockpiling cash for that project, which didn't happen. So we were able to tap those funds, which has been a godsend in dealing with this revenue shortfall.
Absolutely. And we have been, we are looking at a couple of our, those bond payments are coming off in the next few years. We paid one off last year, I think. So that was why we thought we could do Ann Ashley, and that we could take on extra debt payments because some were coming off. So we could take new on. So that's, yes, definitely been a godsend as well.
All set, Tom? Okay, anybody else with on revenue, parking revenue or collections? Okay, parking study. So tying into the work that the Affordable Housing and Economic Development Committee does, there is a recognition, especially in certain locations in the downtown, that we run into the parking versus affordable housing gauntlet that we've seen before. So to try to address that in advance, Smith Group, the DDA, and the Housing Commission are working together to determine the impact on parking if we were to redevelop some surface lots for affordable housing. Obviously, doing a study like that during the global pandemic is not going to get you the best data. It's going to get you data based on what we're currently experiencing, which is not normal. So we have an old Nelson Nygaard study, and Nelson Nygaard is involved again, working with Smith Group to update their old plan, but we're kind of in a holding pattern, if you will, to determine when we're going to pull that data so that the data we do get is something we can rely on going forward. Hopefully that's next year. And then the last bit is the transportation get downtown. discussion. Triple ATA began collecting fares again August 2nd. They are still on temporarily reduced service routes, and they are asking people that ride them to do essential trips only. The Flex ride will expand, replacing the night ride and the holiday ride, and the Go Pass renewals will begin again on the 31st, which was 2 days ago. And the distribution of passes in September, that process is a little bit different than normal because there is no in-person pass renewals at the Blake Transit Center, so it's all done online. And that's all I have.
Okay, next meeting, Darren?
The next meeting is Wednesday, September 30th at 11 a.m. on the Zoom.
On the Zoom, excellent. Well, that was meaty. Thank you very much. Next up is the Finance Committee report. I'll turn it over to co-chairs Bob Gunsel and Marie Klopp.
Marie, do you want me to go ahead? Hello, Marie. Looks like the answer is yes. We got a short report in any event. The August committee meeting was canceled due to lack of critical business. So mainly we've been seeing Sarah in terms of working on the FYI 20 audit, which begins now. And Sarah will have an update at the September committee meeting about the status of the audit, and investment reports will be also heard at that meeting. Questions or comments about that? Let me ask Sarah if she'd like to be a little more specific about where we are with the audit. Sarah?
Hi, Sarah here. Yep, we are, all of the information that the auditors have requested has been submitted. They are starting the, they've been doing some preliminary work already, but they'll start the audit in full tomorrow. And we are doing that audit remotely for the first time, so that should be interesting. It's been interesting so far, but I'm hopeful that everything's going to go really smooth. One of the things that's made this incredibly easier than it would have been otherwise is the new software system and the new chart of accounts. We're able to allow our auditors to remote in and access the general ledger and the accounts payable modules directly. We've been scanning invoices in, so those are available for them to review, and also support for journal entries. So all of that's been really helpful in doing this remotely. So appreciate the new software very much. As I've said many times, still loving it.
Questions, other questions, comments? Sarah, or about the report?
This is Jessica. I have a question, not about the audit, but about our revenue. So I understand what you were saying a bit ago about parking revenues, and I appreciated your presentation earlier in the year about your most optimistic and pessimistic projections regarding parking revenue. My question is actually about TIF. So I realized that I'm not actually clear how it's collected, by which I mean in terms of schedule. Are we looking at seeing the TIF impacted by the pandemic a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, or is that not really a revenue stream that's going to be impacted by this?
Sarah?
My understanding in discussions with the city, and I'm going to point to Tom here, is that they are not at this time anticipating any tax impact in the foreseeable future. We also have a bit of some wiggle room between what we actually receive and what might be impacted as far as taxable values, because we have a ceiling. So that does protect our revenues from fluctuations to a degree.
I see.
But yeah, no, I think the TIF fund is, as far as I know, I mean, we're definitely going to see economic impacts, but Tom, do you have anything else to add to that as far as projections on your side?
Well, in relation to the DDA, I was going to say the same thing you did, which was there is a gap that now exists between the cap and what between the taxable value, assessed value, and the cap that you have. And so you do have a few years where your revenue should continue to go up at I think it's 3 or 3.5%.
3.5.
Yeah, and unless we have a decrease in values, which may occur, that is you've got some room. So imminently no, but I'd say 2-3 years out we'd have to see.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Marie, anything to add?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, Bob.
No problem. Okay, our next meeting, our September meeting is October 1st. How about that? That's at 9 a.m. on Thursday, October 1st. And remember, that's a new time, 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. And Marie's nodding head. So next up is the executive committee report. In a moment, I'll go to the resolution that we're going to discuss, but I just want to speak to the last two conversations the executive committee has had, both the meeting directly prior to today's meeting and the special meeting that we convened last week, with the intent of really in earnest beginning the search for the next executive director. I'm not going to say Susan 2.0, but I will say next millennium Susan. So I'm looking forward to that. The conversation last week was pretty robust. And what we were talking about was really how the responsibilities for the work are going to be managed. And what kind of emerged from the conversation is that the executive committee, by our bylaws and also in spirit, will really kind of manage the recommendations and the work of the search and bring those recommendations and research to the board for all decisions. So when we contract with a search firm, when we have qualified candidates to review, all of those decisions will be worked on by the executive committee and worked on by the board. Jerry Lax, our legal counsel, and his colleague Jeremy Kennedy joined the meeting this morning to answer some questions about the Open Meetings Act and what we need to be sensitive to regarding human resources issues. They were helpful in kind of pointing to the line that we need to walk between a public and transparent process and sensitivity to people's privacy in the job application process. So with all of that in mind, we're bringing forward a resolution authorizing the executive committee to oversee the search for the next DDA executive director. If I could ask for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Thanks,
Second,
Bob.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom. So that, I felt like there was one other thing I wanted to say on that, but I'll look to the other members of the executive committee for any additional thoughts on the conversation that we had or on this particular resolution. I remember what I wanted to say. On review of our bylaws, it's actually very clear in the bylaws of the Downtown Development Authority that the executive committee already has the power to conduct this search. But what we wanted to do with this resolution is really kind of put a line in the sand of this is the beginning of the process. So for folks really on the outside who are following along, it becomes easier to kind of track the search process from beginning to end. So the resolution is a way of kind of marking the formal beginning of that. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move to a vote? Y'all are making being a chair really easy. I thought this was going to be bumpier. All right, so hearing no additional comments, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Okay, the resolution authorizing the executive committee to oversee the search for the next DDA executive director is approved. Thank you very much. We also reviewed the board meeting agenda prior to today's meeting. We are additionally going to be scheduling a special meeting in September to continue to further the work on the executive director search. We don't currently have a date and time set, but of course we'll notify everyone when we do. The next executive committee meeting will be prior to next month's board meeting, which I think is October 7th. Okay, is there any new DDA business to discuss? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would wish to address the DDA board? If you're attending by computer or phone with the Zoom app, please use the raise your hand function and I will call on you. And when I say I mean Kelly. And at that time, please unmute your microphone, state your first and last name and share your comments. Is there anyone who would like to give comment to the DDA today?
Yes, I see Peter Honeyman has his hand up.
Okay, Peter.
Hi, thanks, Peter Honeyman. Thanks very much, DDA, for supporting the Lurie Terrace purchase. And please don't forget about the commitment to the Y lot in the fiscal year 22 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the DDA board?
Yeah, I don't see any other members of the public.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved, Tom.
And a second, please.
Support, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. All right, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, we're out.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice job.
Yes, thank you very much, Bob.